Bon, disons, aujourd'hui, au huis clos, on a trouvé le temps long parce que on ne retrouve pas grand-chose dans l'énoncé économique de l'automne. Quand on entend le discours de la ministre, quand on lit l'énoncé, bien, on voit qu'il y a une certaine préoccupation. On reconnaît qu'on est dans une crise d'inflation. On reconnaît qu'il y a un risque de récession à l'hiver prochain. Mais après ça, quand on regarde quelles mesures est-ce qu'il y a pour le monde pour faire face à tout ça, à ces risques-là, à l'inflation, au coût de la vie qui augmente, bien, c'est du réchauffé. Peut-être comme le pâté chinois, le réchauffé goûte meilleur, mais il n'y a rien de nouveau dans l'énoncé. Nous autres, par exemple, on disait, bien, s'il y a des risques de récession, on ne veut pas, s'il y a des gens qui perdent leur emploi dans l'année qui vient, on ne veut pas être pris avec ramener une PCU 2.0. On a un système d'assurance-emploi qui est brisé, qui ne fonctionne pas, qui ne joue pas son rôle. Il est urgent de le réviser en profondeur. On s'attendait vraiment à ce que ça soit annoncé dans l'énoncé, mais non, pas une ligne là-dessus. Même chose, on le sait, on le vit au quotidien, là, le système de santé, il craque de partout, il ne va pas bien. Puis Ottawa, bien, depuis des années, ne joue pas son rôle de financer. Ottawa doit se concentrer sur ses missions fondamentales, notamment s'assurer que le système de santé est adéquatement financé. Pas une ligne là-dessus. Donc là, dans quelques jours, les ministres de la Santé vont se rencontrer, mais bien, ils vont voir que dans l'énoncé, il n'y avait rien là-dessus. Face à l'inflation, au coût de la vie, on demandait à ce qu'il y ait un meilleur soutien pour les aînés. Hein. Leurs rentes, leurs revenus ne sont pas adéquatement indexés face à l'augmentation du niveau des prix. Donc, on demandait augmentation de la pension de sécurité de vieillesse dès 65 ans, là, pas juste à partir de 75 ans. Bien, encore une fois, là, pas une ligne, pas un mot là-dessus. Pas aucune mesure pour inciter les aînés qui en arrachent à dire, bien, si vous allez travailler quelques jours par semaine, on va mettre des mesures fiscales pour que ça ne soit pas du bénévolat, puis ce que vous gagnez d'un côté, on vous l'enlève de l'autre côté. Non, rien là-dessus. Donc, c'est vraiment décevant. On pose un diagnostic, on utilise le mot inflation plus d'une centaine de fois, mais en réponse à ça, on utilise les mesures qui étaient annoncées le printemps dernier alors qu'on n'utilisait pas le mot inflation. Donc, on dit, bien, on ne fait rien de nouveau, mais on plug ça à la sauce inflation. Donc, c'est bien décevant comme exercice. Donc, grosso modo, on s'attendait à beaucoup. La ministre reconnaît qu'il y a un problème, crise de l'inflation, menace de récession, mais ce qu'on est déçu de voir, il n'y a pas de réponse, il n'y a pas de mesures concrètes face à ça. C'est que du réchauffé. Donc, je le répète encore une fois, l'assurance-emploi, c'était le meilleur moment pour régler ça, dire on va s'y attaquer, on va moderniser le régime, le rendre efficace. C'est pas là. Les aînés, dès 65 ans, pas de nouvelles mesures. Puis même chose pour le système de santé, pas de financement additionnel alors qu'on est en pleine crise. Bien décevant. Merci.
Okay, I'll have a quick opening remark, and then I look forward to your questions. For Canadians who were told again and again that the Prime Minister was going to have their backs, in this fall economic statement, he's actually turned their backs. Specifically, the cost of energy going up, no relief for Canadians dealing with a future of a cold winter. Unlike other countries where there have been supports put in place, we don't see that here. With Canadians struggling with the cost of groceries, no attempt to tackle greedflation in a concrete way. We've called for a windfall tax, as other countries have done, to tax the excess profits, for example, in the oil and gas sector, as a way to tackle that greed that is driving up the cost of living. Nothing to address that. And finally, on healthcare, a major crisis, no steps to deal with the healthcare crisis that we're up against. And so we're going to continue fighting to make sure Canadians are a priority. Tomorrow, Canadians are going to receive a GST rebate. That's going to be double what it was before. That's because we forced this government to do so. Even though they said no initially, we forced them to make this happen, and we're going to continue fighting for Canadians. Donc, dans cette mise à jour économique, le gouvernement qui a promis d'être là pour les gens a tourné les dos aux gens. Pour le coût de chauffage, le coût d'épicerie qui continue d'augmenter, la inflation ou l'inflation causée par l'avarice ou la cupidité, ce gouvernement n'a pas pris des gestes, des mesures nécessaires pour faire face à ce problème. Comme les autres pays ont fait avec une taxe sur les profits excessifs, On a demandé que le gouvernement fasse la même chose. Ils n'ont pas fait ça. Donc, on va continuer de mettre la pression. On sait qu'on a besoin des investissements dans notre soin de santé. On a besoin d'appui pour les Canadiens pour cet hiver qui s'en vient. Et dans cette mise à jour économique, le gouvernement a manqué le coup, mais on continue de se battre pour les gens. Nos efforts, par exemple, ont obtenu le fait qu'on a doublé la TPS, le crédit d'impôt de la TPS, et demain, ça va commencer avec plus d'argent dans les poches des gens. Comme on a fait ça, on va continuer de se battre pour vous. Merci. With that, I'm ready for questions.
So the Finance Minister today said that she believes that the government is striking the right balance between fiscal responsibility and helping Canadians who need assistance. It seems like you're saying that that is not the case, that they have not struck that balance properly. So does that mean you don't support the economic update that they've been providing and the initiatives that are within it?
So we think the government absolutely has not taken the right approach here. There are a number of prudent and practical ways for us to both make sure we've got the revenue to be able to provide relief and support to Canadians. And other countries have actually done it. When I talk about making sure we tackle greedflation or the corporate greed driving up the cost of living, other countries have done this with a windfall tax, a tax on the excess profits of the oil and gas sector, which, let's be clear, are making record profits and are profiting off of a war, what the Biden administration has referred to as war profiteering. They need to be tackled, and this government doesn't have the courage to take them on. We need to do that. And so we're deeply concerned about the lack of concern about what Canadians are going through, but we're not going to give up the fight just because we don't see the elements in the fall economic statement. We put forward the idea of doubling the GST tax credit in the spring, and tomorrow Canadians are going to finally receive it. So we didn't give up fighting for Canadians, and we were able to secure a victory for Canadians, money in their pockets. The same way we'll continue to keep the pressure going and fight back to make sure Canadians get some support over this cold winter coming out. Yes.
Donnait trop d'argent aux Canadiens. Il était où l'équilibre, selon vous?
Donc, on a proposé des mesures prudentes et pratiques pour donner l'appui aux gens et avoir la façon de gagner les revenus pour le faire. On a parlé de ce que l'Angleterre, l'Union européenne ont fait, la mesure de taxer les profits excessifs des grandes entreprises qui ont gagné des profits records. Ça, c'est une mesure pratique et une mesure que les autres pays ont déjà fait. Et on peut faire ici au Canada pour faire face à la inflation, mais aussi pour aider les gens. Parce que ça, c'est aussi vraiment important de reconnaître que le coût de chauffage augmente et les gens ont besoin d'aide.
These problems with it, why are you going to vote for it?
Well, we give the example of doubling the GST rebate. We brought that idea forward in the spring. I mean, many months ago. The Liberals said no. The Conservatives came out aggressively against it. We kept on fighting. We didn't back down. We used our levers. We used our position in Parliament. And tomorrow, 12 million Canadians are going to see their GST rebate doubled. That's 12 million Canadians are going to receive up to $500 in their pockets. One of the most significant measures to help people in this difficult time, probably the only direct measure to help Canadians when it comes to that vast number of Canadians to get some real support. That's because we made it happen. And so we're not going to give up fighting for Canadians just because we don't see it in the fall economic statement. We're going to keep on using our power to deliver for Canadians as we've done. The three major things that are happening right now in Parliament to give people respect, dental, rental, and GST rebate, are all things that not only could not have happened but for us, were our ideas, and we forced the government to deliver on, and we have it all in writing. So this is an example of what we want to continue to do. And just because we don't see the government understanding Canadians' needs, and just because Justin Trudeau is disconnected from reality, doesn't mean we're going to give up the fight to make sure Canadians get that support.
It seems like you're advocating for more spending at a time when that carries its own risk. So what do you have to say to critics of your approach?
Well, what we're proposing is a very practical and prudent way to pay for real help to Canadians. And so the way what we're proposing is something that other countries are already doing, a windfall tax on the excess profits of large corporations. So like I mentioned, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Spain have all put in place this windfall tax. We know that corporate greed is driving up the cost of living. And so what we're calling for is a targeted approach to giving Canadians the help they need, and targeting it will make sure it doesn't increase the inflation in any way. But paying for that through a windfall tax is a prudent way to do it, and something other countries are already doing.
There's support in here for students. What do you make of that?
We campaigned on making sure that we end interest on student loans. That's something we've campaigned on, something we called for throughout the pandemic, and our pressure seems to have been successful here, and that's something that we've long called for and finally is being achieved. Thanks, Jill. Thank you so much. Merci.
Hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde. I think today, after reading through the fall economic statement, we are feeling really a sense of relief, but we also think that this was a missed opportunity. We are very glad to see that there is no increase in the tax benefit for carbon capture and storage, which we see as a fake climate solution and not something we should be supporting. But also, really there's a recognition that people need help now. And we're happy about a lot of the things that are out here, but we do not think it's enough. Vraiment, les Canadiens, les Canadiennes ont besoin d'aide maintenant, avec le logement, soins de santé, l'alimentation, l'épicerie. C'est très important. We are very happy that it seems that Finance Canada is getting the idea that inflation, our inflationary crisis, is really a supply-side crisis that is driven by both conflict and the climate crisis. And because of this, we're not expecting that regular measures for inflation are going to fully work. This understanding seems to be growing, and we hope that it gets fully there and gets addressed adequately. We will mention that in particular, we are happy to see the student loan interest relief, or removal, I should say, and also the investments in clean technology. But again, really, that sense of relief is mixed with the sense that there are so many people who are in need of help right now, who are not going to be getting it yet. So thank you. We're here for questions. Questions pour tout le monde ici. Je suis ici avec Mike Morris, Elizabeth May, nos deux députés et aussi mon chef adjoint Luc Jolicoeur. Merci.
Qu'est-ce que vous auriez aimé voir de différent dans cette mise à jour?
Vraiment des autres soutiens pour tout le monde de base. Parce que franchement, avec les problèmes de l'alimentation en ce moment, c'est pas assez de donner des extra soutiens aux travailleurs et travailleuses. Ça doit être quelque chose d'immédiat et on ne voit pas quelque chose comme ça là-dedans. Yes, so we would be thrilled. Actually, we have been pushing in the chamber for a windfall tax on oil and gas profits. And really what we're seeing right now is so many people struggling across the country and massive profits in both the oil and gas sector, but also in other areas like supermarkets, chains and stuff like that. So for sure, we were hoping to see a windfall tax for oil and gas. It's a tax measure that we'd really like to see used in general, along with a wealth tax.
We need to be honest about the climate emergency that we are in, and a windfall tax is one of many solutions proposed around the world, including by the UN Secretary General, that is an example of the missed opportunity that is much of what's in this fall economic statement. This is a time when Imperial Oil, for example, their profits are up more than 4 times the same amount last year, $6.2 billion in profits in the midst of a climate emergency. While they gouge Canadians at the pumps, this is obviously a time where we should put an end to all subsidies to fossil fuels and begin with a windfall tax, for example, as you've called out, that could be used to invest in the home energy retrofits that we do need, that are proven climate solutions. And so as Dr. Kuttner shared, it's a relief to at least not see new subsidies introduced, as was the case in the last budget, but a missed opportunity to not see a windfall tax introduced and to put an end to fossil fuel subsidies altogether.
Merci.
So I'd just like to comment on the response from the official opposition. You know, I got up to ask Mr. Poilievre a question because he came out very strongly to say that he would not support important measures that are going to support Canadians. He said right from the beginning that he won't be supporting the fall economic statement, which means he won't be supporting students across this country with the permanent elimination of interest rates on student loans. He said he won't be supporting the fall economic statement, which means he won't be supporting the Canada Workers' Benefit. This is a clear pattern of the Conservatives who talk a big game on affordability, but when the rubber hits the road, they vote against time and time again important measures that support hardworking Canadians. You know, yesterday the Prime Minister asked the Leader of the Opposition if, as he says, he's going to stand for rights and freedoms, that he will actually stand up against the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause in Ontario. He refused to answer that question, and he tried to cleverly turn it around. But the fact of the matter is that if you have someone who's saying, I'm going to stand up for your rights, I'm going to stand up for your freedoms, but on the very first occasion doesn't, they're telling you who they are. We have to expect this from the Leader of the Opposition, I guess, because he's been consistent in demonstrating that he's not going to be there for low-income Canadians, that he's not going to be there for middle-income Canadians, that he voted against the Canada Child Benefit, he voted against affordable childcare that's helping families from coast to coast to coast. But I would hope that in these times when Canadians are struggling, when we need to be there all together working for them, that we could count on members of Parliament from all parties to stand together and to make sure that we're providing that real support to Canadians. Thank you. En français. OK, parfait. Je viens de faire une demande du parti du chef conservateur sur son réponse qui a déjà dit qu'il ne va pas appuyer le Fall Economic Statement, comment on dit ça? Énoncé économique de l'automne. Et je suis déçue parce qu'il a déjà énoncé aux étudiants partout en ce pays qu'il ne va pas appuyer l'élimination d'intérêts sur les prestations, merci, les prêts d'étudiants. Il a dit aux travailleurs moins nantis qu'il ne va pas les appuyer. Et il a dit à l'industrie canadienne qu'il ne va pas appuyer les importantes mesures pour attirer l'investissement dans notre économie. C'est quelque chose qui est consistant avec le chef de l'opposition, où temps et temps, il décide de voter contre les mesures importantes qui appuient aux Canadiens, et particulièrement dans cette époque de haut coût de la vie. Au lieu d'appuyer les mesures qui vont appuyer les Canadiens, il a déjà dit qu'il ne les appuyait pas. Et pour quelqu'un qui dit qu'il appuie aux droits et aux libertés des Canadiens, à la première lieu où il a l'opportunité de se lever pour les droits des Canadiens, il décide de ne le pas faire. Alors, je crois que ça démontre aux Canadiens exactement qui est là pour défendre les droits des Canadiens et qui n'est pas là. Merci.
Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis content d'être ici puis parler un peu de l'énoncé économique. Nous sommes contents de voir quelques mesures dont l'NPD a fait demande depuis longtemps, comme l'élimination de l'intérêt sur les prêts étudiants d'une façon permanente. Nous pensons que ça, c'est une bonne chose. Il y a quelques mesures dans le secteur de logement. Il inclut un taxe anti-flipping, puis un doublement du... je ne sais pas le bon mot français, alors...
Le crédit sur la TPS.
Oui, ils ont doublé the first-time homebuyers tax credit. Je n'ai pas le bon mot français pour ça. Mais on est content de l'avoir là-dedans. Ils ont mettre en œuvre, ou ils vont mettre en œuvre le Pandemic Dividend, qui est un paiement des banques et des compagnies d'assurance qui ont fait des grands profits pendant la pandémie. Et de plus, ils vont aussi le taux permanent qui paye comme taxe pour les corporations sur ces institutions-là. Alors ça, c'est des bonnes choses qu'on voulait voir. Mais il y a un vrai moment qu'on vive comme pays maintenant. Et les Canadiens et Canadiennes sont peur de perdre leur maison. Ils ont des vrais problèmes à acheter leurs épiceries. Puis si on pourrait éliminer le TPS sur le coût de réchauffage des maisons, ça ferait une grande différence. Le gouvernement maintenant parle d'une récession. Puis nous savons bien que notre système d'assurance-emploi est brisé. On l'a su depuis longtemps. Puis il y avait des règles qui étaient meilleures pendant la pandémie, mais juste en septembre, le gouvernement a décidé de retourner au système brisé qui était là avant la pandémie. Puis nous savions tous que notre système de santé n'est pas adéquat et que c'est vraiment en crise. Et nous avons besoin d'un gouvernement fédéral qui va démontrer un peu de leadership avec des fonds pour les provinces pour embaucher plus de monde et former plus de monde pour travailler dans notre système de santé. Puis la seule mention de question de santé dans cet énoncé économique est au sujet de soins dentaires. Ça, c'est une bonne chose. C'est quelque chose dont l'NPD a exigé du gouvernement, mais ce n'est pas le seul problème dans notre système de santé auquel le gouvernement fédéral devrait s'adresser. So we're here today to talk a little bit about the fall economic statement. To be sure, there are things in there that we're glad to see. We've fought for a long time now for a pandemic dividend to ensure that banks and insurance companies are paying back some of the massive profits that they saw over the pandemic years. We've also fought for a higher corporate tax rate for those same institutions. Those are things that are coming. They're heralding the creation of a sustainable job center, which is something that workers need as we transition to a more climate-friendly economy. There's an anti-flipping house tax. There's a doubling of the first-time homebuyers tax credit. These are things that the NDP has advocated for some time. So there are some positive things, but does it meet the moment? While Canadians right now are struggling to afford their groceries, they're having hard conversations about rent or mortgage payments, and there are, frankly, many more things that the government in Ottawa could be doing in order to ease that burden for Canadian households. We've been pushing for a long time now to see the GST removed from home heating costs. That's something that can make a difference for Canadian families as we get ready for another cold winter. We've been pushing very hard for the government for a long time now to reform our broken employment insurance system. Now the government is talking about recession. They were talking about EI reform before the pandemic. We actually got some reform during the pandemic. We're on the cusp of a recession, and the government decided to return to the broken employment insurance system of the pre-pandemic era instead of bringing in needed modernization to make sure that as hard times come, Canadians can rely on an employment insurance system that's going to help them pay the bills if they end up out of work again. And the only mention of health care in this document is dental care. And while New Democrats are very proud of a new national dental care program, and we fought very hard in order to make that happen, it's not the only thing that needs addressing when it comes to health care in this country, as anyone who has tried to take their child or their parent to an ER knows very well. And we need the federal government to be stepping up with funding and with leadership to convene the provinces to talk about how we're going to train more people to work in our healthcare system, how we're going to hire those people and how we're going to get them working so that Canadians can count on having medical services when they need them. So these are some of the things or some of the places where we think the fall economic statement is deficient, and we're going to continue to press the government on those issues and demand better.
The government today warned there's a possibility of entering into a recession in 2023. If that is the case, how do you think federal government spending needs to change?
Well, look, I mean, I think, first of all, that there are things that government is going to have to be spending money on. We know that we have to spend money on the climate transition, or we're going to end up spending a lot more in the long term. There are things that they can be doing, like reforming our employment insurance system that's going to get us ready for a recession, which doesn't necessarily involve a lot of additional money. What it requires is a better system overall. We saw rules changes during the pandemic that improved access to employment insurance that the government just torched in September for no good reason and without a plan for what should replace it. So there are things that they can be doing to prepare for recession, some of which is going to involve some spending. Others are actually just some appropriate, it's more than housekeeping because it is significant changes, but they're rules changes. They're not necessarily expenditures. And then there are places where government can be looking for revenue to pay for the things that we do have to fund, like, for instance, a windfall profit tax on companies like Loblaws, which we learned today is making $1 million more a day in profit over and above their last banner year. So there are places where government can be searching for the revenue to pay for the things that have to be paid for, and there are things they can do to help that don't cost a lot of money up front. Okay, merci.